I want you to think about the last time someone asked you what to do. A prospect, a referral, potential patient, and you watch their eyes glaze over about 45 seconds into your answer. You're explaining something real, something important, something that genuinely changes lives when people actually do it. But somewhere between the science and the story, you lost them. And the frustrating part, you knew it was happening. You just didn't know how to stop it. If that moment sounds familiar, if educating prospects about your specific services feels like an uphill battle, no matter how clearly you think you're explaining it, well, then this video is for you. Because the problem isn't your service. The problem is how you're describing it, and that is entirely fixable. Now, here's what I see happen with healthcare providers who offer complex, specialized, or integrative services. They are deeply knowledgeable. They've invested years, sometimes decades, in understanding what they do and why it works. And when they explain their services, they explain them from the inside out. They lead with the methodology, the clinical framework, the research, the process. And the prospect, who came in hoping to understand if this whole thing is right for them, walks away with information overload and no clear sense of whether to book. Here's the hard truth. Your prospects don't need to understand how your services work in order to trust in them. They need to understand what their life looks like after it works. The moment you lead with the clinical process instead of the patient outcome, you've lost the conversation. Not because your service isn't excellent, but because the prospect couldn't see themselves in your explanation. Confusion is not a trust builder. And in healthcare, where the decision to book is already emotionally loaded, confusion is the fastest path to, I'll think about it, which almost always means I won't. I worked with a functional medicine physician who was exceptionally good at what he did. His patient outcomes for people with chronic fatigue, autoimmune conditions, metabolic dysfunction genuinely were remarkable. But his new patient conversation rate from consultation to booking was under 20%. 20%, which meant that 8 out of every 10 people who sat across from him, people who specifically sought out what his practice did, left without booking. Well, after our consultation process, it became immediately clear why. His explanation of services was, to put it charitably, comprehensive. He walked prospects through the full diagnostic protocol, the lab panel rationale, the 90-day phase treatment structure, the supplement reasoning, the dietary framework, the lifestyle modification tiers. All of it was accurate. All of it was important. All of it completely overwhelming to a person who just wanted to know, can you help me feel better? Now, by stripping away the consultation narrative down to just 3 things: what outcome he delivers in plain language, how the process works in 3 simple steps, and 1 patient story that made the outcome feel real. His consultation to booking conversation went from 20% to 61% within 8 weeks. The problem was never the complexity of what he did. The problem was he was describing his process instead of describing his patient's life after the process. Now, let me show you exactly what's happening in the prospect's mind when you explain your services. When you look on the left, there's too little explanation. The patient doesn't understand what you do, and trust doesn't form. That's a problem too. But right here, the sweet spot, the patient understands the outcome you deliver. They trust you, they book, and that's where you want to be. Over here, where most specialized practices live, there's too much clinical detail. The patient feels overwhelmed and confused, and then they go elsewhere. Not because your service isn't right for them, but because they couldn't see it clearly enough to commit. Here's the contrast that makes it concrete. What most practices say: our proprietary protocol combines evidence-based modalities with integrative techniques to optimize neuromuscular outcomes. What the patient needs to hear: we help people with chronic back pain get back to doing what they love without surgery. Same service, but a completely different effect. Confusion is the enemy of conversion. Clarity is your strategy. So how do you fix this? Well, here's the framework that I would suggest using with every practice that struggles to explain their services clearly. 3 parts and done in this specific order. First of all, the outcome statement. Lead with this every single time. Before you explain anything about how you work, name the specific transformation your ideal patient experiences, not your modality, not your certification, not your approach, but the result. The template is simple. We help, name your specific client, achieve what's the specific result without the thing that they're most afraid of. For the functional medicine practice physician, we help people with chronic fatigue and autoimmune conditions get their energy and their life back without guessing or treating symptoms one at a time. That one sentence does more work than a 20-minute consultation explanation. Lead with it every single time. Now, the second part, the simple process. 3 steps, plain language, no jargon. After the outcome lands, prospects naturally want to know, how does this work? And the answer has to be simple enough for a 10-year-old to follow. Not because your prospects aren't intelligent, but because clarity converts and complexity stalls. Step number 1, we assess. We run a comprehensive evaluation to understand exactly what's happening on your body. Step 2, we build your plan, a personalized protocol designed specifically for you. Step 3, we execute this all together, guided, supported, and we make adjustments as you progress. 3 steps, that's it. Save the clinical depth for the clinical conversation after they have booked. Now, part 3 is the proof bridge. One story, one outcome, one patient who looked exactly like them. The outcome statement earns their trust. The simple process earns their understanding. The proof bridge is what will earn their trust. You give them a brief patient story, not a testimonial, but a story that shows your prospect, someone who had exactly what this person has when coming to us. And here's what happened. One of our patients came to us after 3 years of fatigue and brain fog, so severe that she'd have to step back from her career. Within 12 weeks of starting her protocol, she was back at work full-time in training for a half marathon. That story does what no other clinical explanation can do. It makes the outcome feel possible for the person who's sitting across from you. Outcome first, process second, proof third, in that order, every single time. Here's what I want you to sit with. You didn't spend years of developing your clinical expertise so that prospects would leave your consultations confused. You built something real, and it deserves to be communicated in a way that actually reaches the people who need it most. The complexity of what you do is a feature. It shouldn't be a liability. But it only functions as a feature when it's wrapped in language your prospect can understand, believe, and act on. Every time a qualified prospect leaves without booking because they couldn't grasp what you were offering, that is a communication failure, not a clinical one. And communication failures are fixable. Lead with the outcome. Simplify the process. Bridge it with proof. Do that consistently in your website copy, your consultation language, your video content, and your social media. And the prospects who are right for you will recognize themselves in your words and they will book. Now, if you've been providing a service that genuinely transforms patients' lives, but you've been struggling to explain it in a way that converts prospects into bookings, well, that's something I can help you with. We help practice owners and agencies translate complex clinical services into clear, compelling language that educates, builds trust, and moves the right patients to act across your website, your consultations, your video content, maybe your marketing funnels. Connect with me for a 20 to 30-minute strategy section. No pressure, no obligation, but a chance for us to see what we can do to help you start translating some of your consultations into more bookings. My name is Kurt Landreth. You can call me, email me, or book an appointment anytime on my scheduler. Look forward to communicating and talking with you soon.